A stunning discovery in Greenland has unearthed a relic of Cold War history, hidden for more than 50 years beneath the ice.
The ice sheet in northwest Greenland disappeared 400,000 years ago and was replaced by Arctic tundra.
Scientists just found a hidden nuclear city beneath Greenland's ice. Not ruins, not ancient history. A fully intact underground military base, with tunnels, railways, and a nuclear reactor, buried 8 meters deep. And here's the terrifying part. It's filled with thousands of tons of radioactive waste. Waste that was supposed to stay frozen forever. But the ice is melting, and now it's rising toward the surface. The marvel beneath the ice. In 1959, the United States military unveiled something that looked like science fiction. 8 meters beneath the Greenland ice sheet, they hadn't built a research station. They'd built a city. Camp Century consisted of 21 interconnected tunnels forming a living network unlike anything the world had ever seen. This wasn't some frozen outpost where scientists rationed heating fuel against Arctic winds. Inside stood rows of insulated buildings with impossible amenities. Movie theaters, a library, a chapel, a barber shop, hot showers around the clock. At the heart of it all sat PM2A, the world's first portable nuclear reactor, pumping constant power and warmth to 200 personnel stationed inside the ice. And get this, the Army didn't hide any of it. Color footage, international journalists, even Boy Scout troops got the grand tour. Officials framed Camp Century as peaceful science preparing humanity for future moon bases. But here's the catch. None of it made sense. A research station collecting ice cores doesn't need nuclear reactors. It doesn't need movie theaters. It doesn't need giant Caterpillar tractors hauling thousands of tons of reinforced steel and industrial tunneling machines imported from Switzerland through weeks-long blizzards. The cargo volume matched military infrastructure, not polar research. And the location? Camp Century sat directly along the shortest flight path between Washington and Moscow. Prime missile interception territory. So here's the thing. The comfortable quarters, the journalists, the scout, groups, all of it was a show. A calculated distraction, overwhelming observers with admiration for an engineering marvel while quietly discouraging anyone from asking the obvious question, why build something this permanent for a temporary research mission? Something else was happening beneath that ice, something the cameras were never supposed to find. But what they couldn't see, what the cameras never showed, would make this frozen city look like a playground. The rails leading nowhere. Deep below Camp Century's living quarters, American engineers had built something they kept off every press tour. Archival photographs, buried in military files for decades, reveal tunnels of enormous dimensions, heights and widths that dwarfed the human body. And stretching into the frozen darkness, metal railway tracks, firmly bolted to compacted snow. Now, pay attention to this part. Specialized flatbed rail cars underwent stress tests, hauling loads weighing tens of tons. Technicians measured how tracks settled into ice under moving weight. They calculated metal deformation in sub-zero temperatures. They tested switching mechanisms connecting different tunnel sections. None of this had anything to do with climate research. A glaciology lab drills in place and analyzes samples on site. It doesn't shuttle massive cargo through underground rail networks stretching into darkness. Photographs of researcher Siren Gregerson, standing small against a towering tunnel beside an endless rail line, became the most haunting evidence that Camp Century was something else entirely. When she first saw the scale of what they'd built, she later recalled, she couldn't speak for several minutes. The spatial design didn't resemble a research station. It resembled an underground subway system. And get this, the Swiss tunneling equipment wasn't there to expand living space. It was designed to bore transport tunnels linking points hundreds, possibly thousands of meters apart beneath the ice sheet. The clues pointed to one conclusion. Camp Century wasn't the destination. It was a hub for something designed to move beneath the ice without ever breaking the surface. If Camp Century was only a station, then where was the train? And what was it carrying that required an entire underground city to keep it hidden? And when declassified documents finally revealed what those trains were meant to carry, it was worse than anyone imagined. Peer Object Iceworm, In 1997, a historian named Erik Jørgensen sat in a Danish archive, paging through newly declassified American military documents. Halfway through the third folder, he stopped, read the page again. Then a third time. The room went silent. Camp Century had never been about science. It was a disguise for one of the most terrifying military operations of the Cold War, Project Iceworm. Here's the deal. The US military didn't just want one underground city. They wanted to transform the entire Greenland ice sheet into a mobile, nuclear launch platform. The plan called for a tunnel network stretching 4,000 kilometers, roughly 130,000 square kilometers of frozen labyrinth carved beneath the ice. And inside that maze, a constantly moving fleet of nuclear missile trains, 600 medium-range nuclear missiles. A modified Minuteman variant called Iceman, adapted for launch from mobile rail cars. The trains would never stop moving, snaking through tunnels day and night, making it impossible for Soviet satellites to pinpoint their coordinates. Upon receiving launch orders, a train would travel to a firing point, bore through the ice, launch missiles over the North Pole toward Soviet cities, and immediately relocate. Military strategists had a name for this: America's revenge from beyond the grave. Even if the Soviets launched a devastating first strike that wiped out every American city, hundreds of nuclear warheads would still emerge from beneath Greenland's ice, missiles the enemy could never target. Because they were always moving, it gets worse. Denmark, the sovereign authority over Greenland, had an absolute policy prohibiting nuclear weapons on its territory. The entire Iceworm operation was built without Denmark's knowledge or consent. The 200 soldiers and scientists at Camp Century had no idea they were maintaining a doomsday machine. The PM-2A reactor, praised in newsreels as a symbol of peaceful atomic energy, was actually a prototype for the power systems meant to drive future missile trains. The comfortable living quarters weren't for human well-being. They existed to prove that complex military systems could operate reliably inside ice. People were secondary. The true inhabitants of this underground city were supposed to be ballistic missiles, waiting for their turn on the rails. But Pentagon planners made one fatal miscalculation. They forgot to ask the ice for permission. Nature strikes back. Military engineers in 1959 looked at the Greenland ice sheet and saw a gift. A permanent frozen platform, stable, predictable. They treated ice like concrete. They were catastrophically wrong. A glacier isn't static. It's a living river of ice that crushes everything in its path, flowing under its own immense weight, reshaping itself continuously, grinding forward inch by inch every single day. By 1962, field measurements delivered news that made engineers go pale. The ice was moving and deforming far faster than any model had predicted. Here's what it sounded like. At first, just groaning, deep bass rumbles that rolled through the tunnels at odd hours. Then the walls that were once straight started bulging inward. Ceiling heights dropped month by month. Steel support frames, engineered to withstand military bombardment, began bending. Not cracking, bending, like soft wire. The sound of a steel beam slowly warping under billions of tons of ice is something survivors described as screaming. A high, sustained metallic shriek that went on for hours. Floors shifted. Rail tracks, the entire backbone of Project Iceworm, twisted into corkscrews. Workers tried cutting new ice to maintain tunnel dimensions. It didn't matter. Nature was reclaiming the structure embedded within it, slowly, relentlessly, without mercy. In 1966, the United States military ordered full evacuation. Project Iceworm was terminated, not by politics, not by enemy action, but by the very environment it tried to weaponize. Nature had won. During the frantic withdrawal, the PM-2A reactor was carefully dismantled and extracted. It was too valuable and too sensitive to abandon, but everything else left behind. More than 9,200 tons of construction debris, rail cars, machinery, 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, massive quantities of PCB chemicals, toxic compounds used in paints and insulation that cause cancer, birth defects, immune system damage. And this is where it gets really dark. Thousands of gallons of water that once cooled a nuclear reactor, still contaminated, still carrying radioactive isotopes, all of it simply abandoned. Why would they do that? Because scientists in 1966 believed snow would keep falling, ice would keep thickening, Camp Century would sink deeper every year until it was buried forever. A frozen tomb, completely sealed from the outside world. They thought they'd hidden their failure beneath eternal ice. They were wrong about that too. And now, it's coming back. The tomb reopens. When climate scientist William Colgan's team first ran the numbers on Greenland's ice sheet, they thought they'd made an error. They ran them again, then a third time. His hands were shaking when he picked up the phone. The 1966 assumption that Camp Century would sink forever beneath accumulating snow had been based on climate models showing the ice sheet gaining mass every year. Snowfall exceeding melt, a permanent frozen seal. Modern data has shattered that assumption completely. The Greenland ice sheet is now losing mass. Summer melting outpaces winter snowfall. The protective layer isn't thickening anymore, it's shrinking. But here's the deal. The system that was supposed to bury Camp Century forever is now excavating it. Picture this. Meltwater forms on the surface during summer. That water finds cracks, seeps downward, carves channels through ancient frozen layers, and it can reach the waste zones of Camp Century. 200,000 liters of diesel dissolving into meltwater. PCB chemicals, the stuff that causes tumors and destroys immune systems, leaching into liquid flow. An invisible contamination plume migrating toward the coast, toward the ocean, toward fishing waters where Greenlandic communities have harvested Arctic char for generations, toward the global food chain, and the radioactive cooling water, still down there, still contaminated, now facing the possibility of release into an ecosystem that has no defense against it. Here's where it gets even more frustrating. Instead of mounting an international cleanup response, the governments involved have fallen into diplomatic paralysis. The United States argues that the 1951 base agreement with Denmark permitted abandoning facilities. Denmark can't acknowledge cleanup responsibility without admitting they failed to control military activity on their own territory. A senior Danish official who reviewed the situation reportedly stared at documents for 30 minutes before speaking. "We have no good options," he said. "Only bad ones and worse ones." This stalemate has direct consequences. Modern research expeditions can use radar to map buried structures. They can drill ice cores nearby, but they are strictly forbidden from drilling into the waste zones themselves. Some researchers believe there may be other sites, facilities we haven't found yet, buried deeper, with even more dangerous cargo. The declassified Iceworm documents were heavily redacted, black bars covering entire paragraphs. What did they refuse to tell us? What else is down there? Scientists know a time bomb is ticking beneath the ice. They are denied access to see the timer. The time bomb is ticking, and no one is allowed to look at it. A forgotten legacy Camp Century began with a question: scientific marvel or military disguise? After everything we've uncovered, the impossible logistics, the hidden railways, the declassified Iceworm documents, the abandoned nuclear waste, the answer is undeniable. Camp Century was never about science. It was a monument to Cold War hubris, a large-scale act of geopolitical deception built on the assumption that nature could be controlled. But its true legacy isn't the deception. It's what's happening right now, beneath the melting ice. The first legacy is technological arrogance meeting natural force. Project Iceworm collapsed because military engineers treated a living glacier like dead stone. Nature crushed their ambitions, slowly, patiently, completely. The second legacy is an environmental time. A bomb with a climate change detonator. Leaving thousands of tons of poison beneath ice, confident it would stay frozen forever, created a direct line between 1960s military planning and 21st century ecological crisis. Global warming is pulling Cold War secrets back toward the surface. The final legacy is a stalemate of accountability. No nation will claim responsibility for cleanup. The people of Greenland, never consulted, never informed, are now living downstream from a disaster they didn't create. Project Iceworm never launched a single missile toward the Soviet Union, but it's still delivering its final strike. This time, the target isn't an enemy nation. It's the shared environment of everyone who comes after us. Wars may be declared over, treaties may be signed, monuments may crumble, but the planet never forgets what has been buried within it. So, what do you think? Should they dig it up and risk spreading contamination faster? Or leave it buried and hope the ice holds? Longer than predicted? There's no good answer, only bad ones and worse ones. Let me know in the comments what you'd do. And if this story kept you watching until the end, if you want to keep uncovering the secrets they tried to bury forever, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.